Champions League got off to a good start last night, Tuesday. There are 8 matches played in 4 groups. There'll be 8 more tonight, so I'll do a mini show on those. And then I'll do a quick summary of Europa League, not all the matches. I'm just really going to do the matches that affect Premier League teams. So let's get started with yesterday's Champions League. Group E, the defending champions Liverpool were in Napoli. Watched the highlights this morning. Pretty even first half, not many clear-cut chances. Of course, the stadium was absolutely rocking, as it always is for Napoli. The second half, Liverpool started to look like they were playing for the draw. And then, regrettably, there was an incident which led to a penalty for Napoli. It was debatable, went to VAR, but VAR didn't overturn it. Mertens was clipped, or well, it didn't look like he was clipped by Robertson, but he went over and he stepped up to convert. In added time, they added a second, Van Dijk, the guilty party. So Liverpool off to a loss, losing 2-0. The other match in the group, Salzburg at home to Genk. Well, lots of goals here. A hat-trick for a more Norwegian playing in Austria. And they won emphatically by 6-2. Into Group F, the match of the round was Dortmund at home to Barcelona. Saw some highlights of this. Royce missed the penalty. Not a lot of action in the Dortmund goal area. Messi came on late, but it ran out a goalless draw. The other match in this group was Inter against Slavia Prague. Of course, Lukaku up front for Inter. Sanchez was on the bench. They struggled. The Czechs looked solid and they went ahead. And Inter needed a very late equaliser to grab a draw. So final score was Inter 1, Slavia Prague 1. Into Group G, 2 closely fought matches. Lyon, Memphis Depay playing up front for them. Used to play for United, of course, and is a Dutch international. They were playing Zenit St. Petersburg, who had a couple of those Russian heroes from the World Cup in their side. Ended up a 1-1 draw, probably about even. In Lisbon, though, Benfica are at home to Leipzig, the German side, and they got a man called Werner up front for them, who's scoring goals for fun, and he delivered again. And Benfica suffered a loss, losing by 2-1. Final group then for Tuesday's action. Chelsea were at home to Valencia. Now, after that emphatic display at Molineux, winning by 5-2, I was expecting Chelsea to storm through this one. Valencia are a solid enough side, but they really haven't got too much up front. Chelsea struggled. Abraham certainly couldn't repeat his hat-trick. Willian looked the best player. They brought on Pedro, Lampard did, to try and get the goal, but eventually they fell to a clever worked free kick by Valencia, which led to the solitary winner. So Chelsea off to a bad start, losing by 1-0. And the last game I looked at, Ajax beaten semi-finalist last season to Spurs. They were at home to Lille, a French side. Struggled early on, but once they went ahead, they took command and ended up a comfortable 3-0 win in their first match game of the league stage. Of course, there will be 6 match days before we get to the last 16. So that's part 1 of the Champions League done and dusted. 2 will be tomorrow morning. Okay, it's Wednesday's matches in match day 1 in the Champions League. A summary of those 8 games, groups A to D. Let's start off with Group A, the big clash, Paris Saint-Germain home to Real Madrid. Madrid were fielding Eden Hazard for the first time this season since his transfer, his whoppingly big transfer from Chelsea. But it didn't do them much good. Paris Saint-Germain were without Neymar and they were without Mbappe and Cavani, but it didn't seem to make a scrap of difference. Di Maria was their star, the Argentinian, and they cruised to a 3-0 win with Di Maria scoring 2. In the other match in Group A, we had Bruges, or Brugge as they call it, from Belgium at home to Galatasaray. Galatasaray, they had Ryan Babel in their starting lineup, coming over from Fulham. It was a pretty good match all in all, but no goals at the end of it. It ended goalless. So on to Group B. This group included the Premier League side Spurs, of course beaten finalist last season, and they were travelled to Greece, to Athens, to play Olympiacos, and Dele Alli started, as did Lucas Moura. Didn't see the Korean Son, maybe he picked up an injury. Anyway, Spurs got off to a flyer, and a penalty by Kane and a luscious effort from Moura put them 2 up, but the Greeks came fighting back and levelled the tie in the second half and looked capable of sneaking the win, but it ended up at 2 each. The other game was in Munich, Bayern Munich at home to Red Star Belgrade, and Bayern looked really sluggish, I must admit. Lewandowski didn't seem to be on top form at all. They took a while to get going and eventually got in front, and then added with 2 further goals late in the second half, but it somewhat flattered them. But anyway, they're off to a win, 3-0. In Group C, Manchester City started their attempt to win the Champions League, and they were away in the Ukraine at Shakhtar Donetsk, and they played them a few times before and they've come out pretty strong. Well, it was much the same, much too strong for Shakhtar. Man City comfortably took this game by 3-0. Gundogan was a star. Jesus got a goal. Aguero rested, and Mahrez also in the action. They were far too good for the Ukrainians. The other match in the group was Dinamo Zagreb at home to Atalanta. Zagreb have suffered some really heavy losses in the Champions League, and they looked up for it. Atalanta making their debut in this stage of the competition, and Zagreb routed the Italians by 4-0, and their striker, his name Odelic, I think, got a hat-trick. So finally to Group D, the big clash was in Madrid at the Vidal Calderon Stadium, Atletico Madrid at home to Juventus. Atletico Madrid had Diego Costa up front for them, and he certainly caused them a problem. Juventus, there was no Ramsey, he was on the bench, I think. It was a pretty good match all in all, and it ended 2-2. A late equaliser by Madrid after Juventus had gone in front. So 2-2 there. The other game was in Germany at the Bayer Arena, Bayer Leverkusen. They were at home to Lokomotiv Moscow, and the Russians looked pretty sharp, and they took this game by 2-1. So that concludes match day 1. A quick summary then. Ironically, the two teams that triumphed in Europe last year, Liverpool winning the Champions League and Chelsea winning Europa Cup, got off to defeats, match day 1 defeats. I'm sure they'll pull that round. So we'll be back with another show. I think next week is match day 2. So anyway, a good start for Manchester City. Spurs did okay, but it's still very early stages. So that's my summary of the Champions League match day 1, Wednesday's matches.